And next up, we have our last panel. Oh, I'm going to get my laptop. So who would say they're new to Web3? Oh, wow, okay. Okay, well then if you're not new, I assume most of you are here for the community before everything else. And I think that's one of like Web3's superpowers, especially when we think about the new creator economy. I'm super excited about this last panel because we're gonna really dive into what's possible when people get together, they create together, they curate together, and here we are, the future of media brands. Thank you to my friend Greg Narain, CEO and co-founder of Zealous, who's going to be moderating. And I'd like to welcome up the other panelists who I think are all here, Jim, Réka, Alex, and Justice. Come on up.
Well, we have the enviable spot of holding you from your drinks. You know, everyone who knows me knows I'm never that person, but we will go quickly. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds to quickly introduce yourselves, and then we're going to dive right in.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm co-founder of Rarible. Many of you know Rarible. Many of you don't know what Rarible does now, and we are doing community marketplaces for communities. So that's our thing.
My name's Justice Conder. I go by 0x in the DAO space. I'm a part of Polygon's new DAO team, and the whole thing here is you've seen the headlines, the Reddit, Starbucks, Nike, you know, so what's better than digital assets, collective management and ownership of those digital assets? And so this team is advancing and ensuring that the DAO tooling exists on this chain to make that possible.
Hi, everyone. I'm Réka, co-founder of Guild.xyz and CMO. We build community infrastructure for platformless memberships and rewards, essentially to make very personalized experiences for individuals and communities at the same time.
Hey, I'm Jim. I do operations at a new project called Catalyst. It's a cross-chain messaging and liquidity platform that is in stealth, but you guys get a little bit alpha. Before that, I was head of experiments and new products at Aave and Lens Protocol.
Wow, fun. Well, thank you all for being here. You know, when we think about Web3, media doesn't always jump out, right? Like, it's the first thing that people think about. We think about finance, we think about APIs and protocols. So what does it mean to be building a media brand, I guess, in this Web3 ecosystem? Because I do feel this is an emerging category, but what are your takes on why media is so critical to the success of Web3? Feel free to popcorn around.
You know, I'll take this one. Now, mind you, I'm going to be interpreting many of these questions strongly through the DAO lens, right? And, you know, you've heard breadcrumbs throughout this whole event of some of these things, but the way I bring it all together is that the creator economy is great. That's a first order kind of, you create something, you release it. The second order is the co-creator economy. And the story behind that is unlock something that's really unimaginable. And Milton Friedman has a good little video when he holds up a pencil and he says, how many people did it take to bring this pencil to fruition? Like all the different resources and bringing it all together, that's a coordination issue. And so, you know, DAOs unlock coordination and collaboration. And so the ability to come together and co-create and produce something in that context is it's a second order thing, and so it's something we're barely scratching the surface on.
I appreciate that, Justice. I think you pointed out actually the three key components of building a media brand, in my opinion. You know, there's the content, there's the production, and then there is sort of the distribution and the marketing, ultimately. So I guess, you know, from a Rarible point of view, right, people are creating they've been creating one kind of asset historically, but we're talking about sort of more of an ongoing creation process. What do you imagine from that first phase of like co-creation? Like, how is that going to play out in a Rarible ecosystem?
Well, I think blockchain has been there for some time, and the very first application of that was finance, and now everybody's saying, oh, NFTs are media blocks. So that's the second biggest possible like application of the Web3 technology that we see, and we've seen it blew up in 2021, and there was a lot of new media brands created of that. I think Yuga Lab became the #1 brand maybe like worldwide today, just because of the community ownership. This fact that community can own the piece of that brand, it is the co-creation in that you're asking for. I can own the part of the brand, and I can promote it on my social networks, and I'm just adding to the brand power by being a part of that brand. So I think that's the biggest just catalyst of media brands in Web3.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I guess, Réka, we're seeing, I guess, as this models continue to evolve, though, that's sort of an indirect participation in sort of the upside, the revenue, the brand itself, right? What are you seeing? Guild, for example, just released a new platform to like help with payments and even crowdfunding and fundraising. How are you seeing this trickle down now? You're also not newly minted, but a burgeoning creator doing more and more on various platforms. How do you see sharing in that ecosystem, and sort of like, how do you see your community and your audience, I guess, participating?
I think that's a very good distinction of community and audience. It's a very different communication style, but you do both at the same time. And with something like a community and giving back the power of curating that style of content, so going back a step, every Web3 community and brand essentially has to become a media company to an extent to be present and be able to distribute what they're building and their mission. So having said that, allowing the community to kind of bottom up curate what type of content and how they're putting that out is super important, I think. Obviously, there needs to be some form of consensus and like higher level decision making involved, but it's great to give more option for the community to be able to contribute to that. And for example, payments is a part of that, but it's not necessarily, it's a great part to kind of put more exclusive content behind a paywall, like how Patreon has been doing it, or how many creators have a great time doing that on Substack. And we can do that now with like a Web3 native audience as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Jim, I didn't forget about you. So you're working on, I know, some, liquidity and sort of, I guess, more in the economics, around this. And so Web3 obviously ushers in a bunch of new models for, how do we represent ownership? How do we represent revenue? How do we represent participation? I guess, what are you imagining, or how do you imagine some of these forces playing out, sort of from a practical economics point of view as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that maybe just like echoing what everyone else has said in this panel, like there is a kind of decoupling of what we perceive as media in the space, at least right now, as it pertains to kind of different parties that are involved in the supply chain, as well as kind of the community and the relationship of kind of these, consumers of a brand are now kind of being more participants and co-creators in the brand. And so one thing that I think I get really excited about when I look at crypto economic primitives and how they kind of enable this long-term media kind of decoupling is kind of when you look into the various economic incentives that can come from it, and actually what are the new behaviors and the new primitives that can arrive from that. And so one of the things that I was incredibly excited about at my time at Aave and Lens Protocol was actually looking into a kind of burgeoning class of a media kind of in like the media supply chain, so to speak, where we call them collectors. And so essentially you have consumers, right? They consume content. You have creators, right? They create content. And there's also collectors or curators as well, and as kind of a kind of third bucket that is augmenting this. And so that's something that, as we've seen right now in kind of the Web 2 or even the Web 2.5 kind of media space, is kind of an overlooked piece, right? Someone that makes Spotify playlists, someone that makes you know, movie recommendations and like their top 10 lists and something like that. That is something that, you know, when you bake in crypto economic primitives, becomes its own creator class in of itself, right? Because in a world in which there is a proliferation of content, how do you actually, you know, tell a story or tell a narrative with that content, or how do you actually kind of filter away from that content? That's something that can be rewarded. And so that's a new class that I'm pretty excited about. Yeah,
I definitely agree. And I think it's interesting, you know, sort of pointing out, you kind of led us to that second bucket, the production side, right? Because co-creation is not just about the sourcing, it's about all the manifestations of that content as well, right? I guess just stepping back or into that sort of realm a little bit, what are the tasks that you do think maybe have economics that previously were very difficult for us to achieve, right? Like you couldn't pay someone, you know, just to edit a transcript maybe, right? It was too difficult to put that together. But if you look at the ecosystems that exist in a traditional Web 2 creator ecosystem, there's tiny little cottage industries around like being creators and producing and supporting that ecosystem. Are you looking at any new models, especially like say from a DAO point of view, Justice, right? Like everyone in a DAO is rowing in the same direction, like ideally, right? How does that apply to media?
I'm really fascinated with the concept, and other people know about it a lot more than I do, but the meta label concept. And we're even going to attempt to do this with reframing what DAOs are in the form of like a meta label is like someone comes out with a vision, kind of a banner. Other people see that and they're like, that's amazing. I want to write under that. And so it kind of creates this co-creation, meta label. Everyone's writing and producing content along this thing. And the lens piece has an amazing element here, right? Because you get attribution of who wrote what, who produced what, under this shared banner, and you have a collective promotion. And so the community can say, this is the best content, and it can be kind of promoted from the top level. And so that's kind of a connection between like the meta label, DAO, lens, and people being able to come together and do what before you would have needed like millions of dollars and editors and stuff. And it starts with that intrinsic motivation before extrinsic. And someone mentioned 0x splits. There's a way to do this programmatically on chain too. So anything that comes out of it, you don't need to debate on where it goes. It gets split.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess, Alex, do you see more of this making its way into like the fundamentals of Rarible as well?
I think NFTs, the question you ask, like, what are the new types of things that are possible that were not possible? And how the Web2 world looks like today. Somebody creates a content, and then it's a media brand, a creator. Then they try to promote it. Then there's like various distribution, and then there's a consumption. And then this value chain of I created something and somebody consumed that, I need to monetize that somehow. And the way it works today is, okay, some brand comes to me and pays me for, I don't know, selling something. And this is more or less like the only way you can monetize today at Web 2. And Web 3 brought you ownership economy. They even say, attention economy, because it's the only thing that is tangible in this world of Web 2. There is no ownership. And the Web 3, you have ownership, and you've got the collectors. You start to have just people who directly pay for content by owning that. So that's the biggest innovation that was brought by Web 3. I would even say that we would move from attention economy to the ownership economy just because of that one thing, one innovation that Web3 brought us.
Yeah, I mean, we're in an interesting time though, I guess, because we're still trying to figure out, there's the 1,000 true fan concept, the 100 true fan concept, et cetera, but how sustainable are the economics? So I guess like if we look at the traditional way that media companies have monetized, usually advertising, right? I'm kind of curious, we work in what's that word? Pseudonymous, right? I can never pronounce it right. That usually doesn't work so well with like the advertising realm, right? Because they usually want to like highly targeted things. How do we think this is going to manifest? Is advertising still play a role, like I guess in the Web3 media brand ecosystem, or are we just displacing it? Réka?
I can take this. I have a very strong opinion. I think like targeting and having the ability to know what users are into with their consent, and using this in a very bi-directional exchange so that I don't have to see ads that I don't care about. Censored myself. So I don't have to see any of that. I fully get targeted events, promotions, and all of that sent to me that I actually care about based on what I've done on the internet so far. And that allows communities, brands, everything to have a much better time, not just pay for ads for Google that are extremely expensive and not necessarily well targeted, but with all the Web3 stuff that we're building, really be very purposeful of how you like target people with your messaging and your content and everything. And for that, we need on-chain and off-chain stuff that recognizes people's user journeys and experiences that you've been through, and also needs the consent from the member and the user as well, which you can give thanks to on-chain stuff and how wallet experiences and credentials are coming along. So this is going to be super exciting of how like I get ads that I actually want to get, but in a good way, not in a exploitative way, but in like an actual valuable way. I'm so pumped.
I like ads.
I'm with you. Yeah, Jim,
Ads are
actually,
good.
can you add on that? I guess because I'm kind of curious, like, there's so much room for innovation still, obviously, right? In many of these domains, right? You've done a lot of experimentation, you know, like ways that networks can like really manifest themselves in new ways. What do you feel about this? I guess like, are there new products that you've imagined yet in this area?
So maybe just to go back
Also,
to
you could just
Réka's
tell us what
response.
Catalyst is now. We all know it's okay.
On Saturday at Eat Denver main stage, please. But I like ads. Ads are good. I buy a lot of things from ads. I bought this from an ad. I like it. I get a lot of compliments.
Dream customer.
I'm conflicted because, of course, you know, I think extractive ads or influential ads that influence us in kind of subconscious ways are of course, a huge debate topic in the space. I also think that having a very transactional relationship between a brand and its consumers is net negative, or rather zero sum in many ways. And so maybe just to finish that thought, like I think there needs to be some way in which there is a economic engine that powers free content, right? Without kind of that extractive element to it. But I also see the value of not having ads and having a value of having more organic conversations and organic engagement. And so all that to be said, to answer your question directly about what kind of mechanisms and experiments am I seeing in place that actually allow for that, again, I think Lens is just kind of a gold standard in that, where there is the power of having data on chain from a media perspective that allows for, and I think my fellow panelists and you kind of alluded to, is kind of that direct attribution at a programmatic level, right? And so, again, I go back to my analogy of having curators, them creating content. When that content is monetized, curators are rewarded for it. When there's a co-creation of content and that gets collected, that gets split accordingly. And so it becomes a more kind of democratic and kind of fair mechanism in which kind of content is created and kind of the value that's created from it is distributed. I think kind of the open-ended question that I'm kind of going back to with ads is, well, are collections and 100 true fans or 1,000 true fans, is that sustainable economically, or does it need to be some sort of additional lever that we need to pull? And therefore, I think analytics and ads kind of play a role in that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think we're still exploring it. You know, we are deriving liquidity in a lot of ways from each other, right? Like, so there's an interesting challenge, I guess, in ultimately scaling that. You know, I've worked in the marketing space for some time now, and I think, you know, we don't have the kinds of ads we want because brands are lazy, right? And there's an interesting model, I guess, where we help create the ads also for the brands, right? Where we could be doing that. But I'm kind of curious, just open to everyone, you know, if we look at the ecosystem today where we are, who are the role models? Who's doing something good, right? Like do you hold up as an example of maybe a modern day Web3 kind of media brand?
I have one that I love and I always bring up. Also, guys, video content, get on it, experiment, try your best, just put it out there. That being said, Capital, it used to be called Party Round. They're amazing. Just look at their Twitter. Their user stories drooling. It's amazing. They never they never directly show themselves. It's incredibly high quality short videos, interviews with their founders and their experience. And then at the, like, of course, at some point it comes into their experience with having fundraising with capital, but it's showcasing what the user actually is doing with their product. Love it. Go Google it, Twitter it, it's amazing.
I would add to that Forefront. Like as a media, I love Forefront. And Bankless DAO, when you see the kind of this army of people creating this content, and this was kind of memed into existence, it's like, this is crazy. From at a on-chain kind of co-creation, there's this ERC 998, and it allows for like open-ended properties. And so you can come in and add your own traits. There's a whole ecosystem. And I'm wondering, like, why aren't we doing more stuff with this? I think there's like one project, Mooncats or something. And so I'm like, we need to pick up on this and hit the gas pedal. So those would be my two media picks, and my one should be explored much more technical.
Double down on Bankless, the best media brand out there. And I'm an NFT guy, so of course NFT collections are great media brands today. And you mentioned the composable NFTs. So Doodles, I think, did really great. Everybody hates them because they go to flow, and that wasn't too much of appealing to this community, I think, at least. But they have a die-hard community of fans. Yeah, you go to the Twitter Spaces, and to your previous point that, oh, there should be targeting mechanism. You go to Twitter Spaces and you see, oh, there's like a third of the people are like Doodles fans, and very easy to target them. And of course, Azuki, all of the blue chips collections became blue chips because they're great media brands. Azuki, Bored Apes, Doodles, all of them, we know them because they are good media brands. We just know them because of that.
Yeah. A fun fact that most people don't realize, you only need about 3,000 downloads to be a top 1% podcast. So almost any well-run NFT project or DAO could be that right now. Takes almost no effort if you really got a great community, right? That's a power we're left to unlock. I'm kind of curious, just, we tend to probably be a little traditional when we think about media, right? Podcasts, live streams, video, social. What's next? What's the new way to use this stuff and recombine it, besides Livepeer, obviously?
Memes.
Memes is definitely a big currency. She's good at them. I'm terrible at them.
Also UGC, so like community, like user-generated content, but from the community. Love it. It's gonna be really great.
I spent 7 years on that train. It was horrible. The things you see, you can never unsee. Let's just put it that way. All right, as we get kind of near the end, I guess, two little things. I have a little segment at the end, called, like kind of a swipe left, swipe right, like what's going to make it versus not. But the last question is just, I guess, how do we deal with IP and just protections, right? Obviously, the things that funnel well from the contract point of view are great, but what if somebody else starts taking our stuff? Any thoughts?
Okay, so I think any attempt to kind of control it is dead. It's not going to work. So I imagine a future where all this is happening on an on-chain social graph, and the brand has the most eyeballs. The parent brand has millions of eyeballs, and there's a permissionlessness to people who want to co-create on that brand. They can create like a whole kind of close on the PFP or additional things on top of it, and there's an attribution and an actual money that comes back to that parent brand because that co-creation is happening on chain. And then there's an incentive for that brand then to take the stuff that it likes the most and elevate it at the top to those millions of observers. And you can have collective management around that and the whole kind of meta label dynamics.
So do you think that means more like CC0 style sort of systems?
CC0 beyond, because CC0 is almost like do co-creation, but it's a right-click save co-creation. It's not an on-chain attribution that they're actually paid on-chain for creating on that and then distributing it. So I think that's the next technical unlock.
Who told me that? There was Optic. Optic, it's an NFT copy mint detection company, and they guy who created that, he was working on YouTube before, and he said that at some point, like at the very early days of YouTube, the brands came to YouTube and asked to remove every like IP protected
Yes,
information.
yeah.
But then they realized that, oh, people actually copy that and copy that and copy that, and the second ask was not to remove that, but to share the ads money that are coming from those views.
Yeah.
So something like that on chain is that we say.
Content ID is a huge, revenue performer for YouTube in general, right? And yes, I think you're right. People opened up, they're like, hey, wait a minute. Before we throw that away, let's figure it out. All right, so we're gonna do a little quick rapid fire, show of hands, whatever you like. I'm just kind of curious what you think, what's gonna make it, not gonna make it. More gated content? Make it?
Super bullish. Everything's going to become a
make it.
game. Organizations is a game. Content creation is a game. It's all a game.
Members only content?
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
Gonna make it.
gonna make it. Podcast NFTs?
Gonna make it.
It's a collectible. It's support.
Premium content?
Definitely.
Yep. Choose your own adventure content?
Yes.
All right, let's see if we like that one. How about creator CRMs? Yeah, okay. Ad networks? All right.
Haven't you?
Well, I liked it, and I would just end. Adam had an interesting comment. I just want your last take before we go, but he mentioned earlier today that he thought that collectors were going to overtake followers, right? In the ecosystem. Who agrees with that idea?
In what context, though? Like, I think it's very contextual how they overtake it.
Yeah, I thought it was intriguing. I think there's room for it to happen, right? But I think only certain ecosystems can mature to that level.
Followers breeds collectors.
Yeah, for sure.
Plus
If
one on
it's
that.
a classic funnel, I would say yes. We definitely have to have that. But I think you need both of them. So thank you, everybody. We know we held you up, but it was a pleasure to be here with you all.